This presentation is presented by Coin Wing, and it will help you decide whether to buy or rent a house, which is a very complicated decision for most individuals. When I was a kid, everyone I knew had a house. My mom owned a house, my friends' parents owned a house, my uncle owns a house. Everyone had a house, and they live in it. It was pretty common sense. I thought life was about growing up, get a job, buy a house, and start a family. And from there, you're all set for the rest of your life. But, there's two sides to every story. Later down the road, when I became to grow up and mature a little bit more, I began to realize you can actually rent a house, not just buying a house. But at this point, I'm like, why would anyone ever want to rent a house? Unless they're like really poor and they can't afford to buy a house. But then, the more I think about it, I kind of understand why people would rent a house and how renting a house has its benefits. Like I said, when I was a kid, I thought renting a house was ridiculous. But if so many people are doing it, it's probably not such a stupid idea, right? Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you shouldn't rent a house because some people find it fits with the lifestyle and some people think there are good benefits in renting a house over buying a house. See, the nice thing about renting a house is that you don't have to worry about the maintenance that is required for the house. The landlord is responsible for any incidental expenses on repairs and maintenance. Say if the house needs carpet reinstallation or repainted walls, you are not in charge of that. All of that is the landlord's responsibilities and he will take care of that. Second, there is no risk of losing the property value. If you don't want to deal with unforeseen complication in the housing market, you can put financial investment somewhere else you see fit. The thing about buying a house is that you have to worry about your property value going up and down, but when you're renting a house, you don't have to worry about that and you just pay a flat monthly rate of say $1,500 to $2,000 a month, and until the end of the leasing contract you are set. And finally, if you don't have any money for a down payment and other expenses such as insurance, taxes, repairs, and upgrades, like I said, all you gotta do is pay the monthly payment for a rental house and you don't have to put any down payment. The only thing you gotta put down is a deposit and that's about it. However, because you are renting this house and you are not buying it, you do not have to pay principal or taxes. Therefore, you do not own any of the property. So by the end of the leasing contract, you either have to renew your leasing contract or move out and find a different home to rent or buy. But with that being said, you do not own anything at all and you have gained nothing except for losing the money that you have paid to live in the house. This is where buying a house has its advantages. Unlike renting a house, you are paying a certain principal which eventually lowers your mortgage, and as time passes you own more of the house, which means you are gaining net worth. But we'll talk more about this a little bit later. Right now, let's go over the few advantages of buying a house over renting a house. There are a few advantages to buying a house. When you buy a house, you get back the tax savings at the end of every year from the monthly tax payment you made on the house. And on top of that, you are building equity to offset the additional monthly expense. Second, buying a house is a very good investment. If you are planning on living there for a long period of time, there must be a good level of commitment, but you will notice that the financial investment in the long run is very well worth it. Finally, you are settling down your roots. You are getting involved with the community, having your own land, and building bonds with neighbors. You are creating a home for your children that they can grow up in and go to school and meet new friends and have a stable life instead of moving around so much. As you can see from this chart depicting home ownership percentage in household renters from 1965 to 2011, that home ownership has increased from 65% to 68%. Renters, on the other hand, notices a fluctuating trend which ends in an ultimate decrease from 40 million renters from 2003 to only 25 million renters in 2011. It is clear that 2/3 of the U.S. population owns a home. With more than half of the U.S. population owning a home, they must know what they're doing. With the facts presented, I highly believe that buying a home is way much better than renting a home. First of all, let's take a look at renting a house. Let's assume that the renter is renting a house with a monthly payment of $1,500. The second assumption is that the renter has a leasing contract that ends in 2 years. since there are 12 months in a year, by the end of the first year, the renter would have paid $18,000. By the end of the second year, the renter would have paid $36,000. If there were any money spent on upgrades or renovations of the home, it is gone. The renter does not receive anything and he walks away empty-handed. What about buying a house? Is it any better? A lot of issues with buying a house is not having a good credit score. With the present economy and house prices dropping and an increase in foreclosure rates, not a lot of people maintain a good credit score. Usually when you buy a house, you put in a down payment of a percentage of the house value, and not a lot of people have that kind of money for a down payment. They would need to get a loan. However, it is nearly impossible to get a large sum of loan with a bad credit score. Good thing there are organizations to help aid us in buying a home. A few organizations that can help us buy a home is the AmeriDream Inc., the FHA, and the government entity DAP. Let's talk more about the FHA, since the FHA is one of the more popular aid to help with buying a home. Now, see, the FHA does not make loans or guarantee loans, it insures a loan. The insurance removes or minimizes the default risk lenders face when buyers put down less than 20%. Without further approval from FHA, its approved lenders are authorized to take loan applications, process loan applications, and underwrite and close the loan. Now let's talk about numbers. Let's say you bought a house worth $400,000. Assuming that the monthly payment on the house, including principal, interest, tax, and insurance, is $2,500. Also assume that out of the $2,500, $500 is the principal you pay, while the other $2,000 is interest, tax, and insurance. At the end of the 2 years period, you would have paid $12,000 worth of principal, meaning your new mortgage balance is $388,000. This means you are one step closer to owning this house. If that's not enough to catch your attention, let's talk about appreciation then. Assume that the house has an appreciation of 5% a year. At the end of the first year, your house is now worth $420,000. Finally, at the end of the second year, your house is worth $441,000. This means that your new home is now worth $41,000 more than it was originally worth. If you add this to the amount of principal you paid off, you will get your total net worth gain, which is the $12,000 combined from the principal with the $41,000 that you just gained from appreciation. This gives you a total net worth gain of $53,000. Oh yeah, let's not forget about the tax savings. When you buy a home, you have to pay taxes. When you pay the taxes though, the taxes reflects in your IRS at the end of the year, and a portion of the money comes back to you. However, if you are renting a home, you do not get any of the tax savings at all. Overall, as you can see, buying a home has many benefits that outshines renting a home. Although you are required more responsibilities, you are ensured a place to live in which you can slowly pay off until you eventually own the place. There is no hassle of moving around and looking for a new school for your kids, or worry about finding a place close to a certain store. Also, you are making a long-term commitment and investing in a possible financial gain in the distant future. The investment built from the total net worth of your home is something you cannot get from renting a house. Therefore, I highly recommend to buy a house instead of renting a house.